It's brilliant. It's technology for you, isn't it? So, James, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us where you are and what you do and why your shirt matches your curtains behind you?
The reason I was laughing, by the way, for those of you listening to this, because Tim was lecturing me on how to record on Zoom and then he couldn't do it, which is what the joke. Anyway, my name's James. I am a vicar up in the north in Leeds. I'm married. I've got 3 kids. What else do you want to know? The curtains, my mum made them. That's why that's the curtains. What else do you want to know about me?
Tell us a bit about your testimony. What's your life up until being ordained?
Okay. So grew up in a Christian family, so dragged to church, but by the age of about 10 or 11, probably somewhere around there, had developed quite a strong atheism, really convinced that God didn't exist, that church was just something my parents did. So went to university to study physics as a committed atheist and to enjoy the delights of university. It was in a shared room with a guy called Mark back in the day when they had shared rooms at university. And in the first term, he invited me along to church. And I was like, not really going to go, but go on, I feel sorry for him, so I'll go. And sat and listened to a guy talk on hell, but just felt something inside in me, basically, people describe their conversion moment as liquid love. This was not that. This was like a moment where I felt something inside me say, I'm here and you're going to follow me. Like, it was just make a decision. It was a real sort of absolutely terrifying moment. And so I did. But in that same moment, I felt, it's weird. I found that I sound like an absolute nut job saying it. I felt that God was there and I felt called to be leading in the church. So
there and then,
I literally sat in a church. It was, I can't remember the name of the church, but the women were all wearing head coverings. The guys were all in suits. I was in the clothes from the night before, probably stinking. I was in no fit state to be in church and just sat there terrified that God was real. And I felt safe and I can't describe it. I was terrified, like, God's real. Crap, what am I going to do about it? And that sense of, I've got a job for you, like, not in a big Moses kind of way, in a I've just, there's a task for you kind of thing. So I cut long story short, played a bit of professional rugby league along the way, but eventually ended up in York studying theology because I had no background really, apart from going to church occasionally, no background in terms of the Bible and stuff. So went and studied theology, got selected for ordination, and so I was ordained at 24, 25, and I'm now 46. So 21 years of ordained ministry, not made a single mistake in 21 years of ordination.
Well, let's explore that a little bit. We're doing a season looking at messy spirituality, the idea that sometimes we are, as churches, guilty of wanting the big and the successful and the glamorous, and it's all measured on how many converts we get. How's that reality for you been for the last 20 odd years?
That's a good question. So I have one of the things that I've been reflecting on this quite a bit recently. One of the things when I got ordained, my heart was, it's where you and I met actually, Tim. I did a placement up in Bradford. You were the youth worker, and in quite a reasonably nice part of Bradford, but still, it was still Bradford. Let's be honest, still Bradford. And one of the things that I felt God was saying to me was like, go to the darkest corners, go to the poorest areas. So my curacy was done in Bolton on actually your neck of the woods, Tim, and a really tough, predominantly a Muslim estate, sort of 60% Asian community, 40% white, very poor. And the church was about 40 people. We grew by 1 in 4 years. And that one was revival, like literally, like with no irony, the one person who became a Christian was the youth worker on the estate, a woman called Christine, who sadly died not that long ago. But her coming to faith was just, it hadn't happened for 15 years in the church. And yet they were amazingly prayerful, faithful people. And it was beautiful. But from there, I then went to a big city centre. I'm just going to switch off WhatsApp. Sorry. I went from there to a big city centre church where it did grow numerically. It was big and it was showy. And we grew by about 500 in 6 or 7 years. And it was like, wow, that's amazing. But do you know what? It left me with a really funny taste in my mouth because we gathered a crowd, but I'm not sure those metrics were helpful. They weren't helpful for my soul. Then a church planted and it didn't grow. And the fact it didn't grow numerically really battered me emotionally and left me going, am I an utter failure? And now what I did was I took that small church plant and we've merged it with a local church plant, with a local parish church, sorry, and we're called a resource church. So we've just planted our first church 2 or 3 weeks ago. But numerically, yeah, we have grown. But numerically, we're small in comparison to some of these big mega churches. We're about, I guess we're 300. So we're big in comparison to a lot of places, but we're not big and showy. We're a family church, pretty much.
What does success then look like? If we're saying that growth, well, we're not saying that growth is bad, but we're not alluding it with definition of success. What does success look like then?
Well, so I before I answer it, give you my kind of take on it, I have to own the fact that my head is turned by numerical success. So it's not that I'm just, and I wouldn't, and if somebody offered it me, I'm not going to turn it down, because there's something about seeing people come to faith is exciting. There's something about being gathered in a big group of people who are like all worshiping together. There's something about that has significance to it, but I don't think it's the primary metric. And I think when it becomes the primary metric, we end up developing some bad habits. In other words, the things that we need to do to build a crowd aren't necessarily the things that you need to do to make disciples. And I'm not sure I certainly have wrestled with that. So if you want to build a crowd, like you probably a big crowd, you need to invest some cash in some good tech and good musicians, and you have to kind of invest, I guess, although there's some examples where that's not the case, perhaps you might argue, but to make disciples is relational. It's slow. It takes time to see somebody come to faith who's not a Christian, who's not from a Christian background, and to help them get to know Jesus and journey with him. That takes time. And for me, success is measured in maturity, I think, probably. And maturity takes a lifetime. So I think I'm not, maybe I should, but I'm not against numerical growth. I like it. We pray for it at church, but we prioritize communal discipleship, and that's our main metric.
Okay, so what would you then, when it comes to kind of signs of the kingdom, when it comes to kind of your week-to-week ministry, how do you, when it talks in the parable about the seeds going on rocky ground and in fertile ground, what is the kind of things you look for week to week in your life and then in ministry then?
Do you know what, that parable is, I think, it's quite scary. So maybe numerically it's right. So maybe only 1 in 4 make it.
Yeah.
So and I see that worked out on a daily basis. I see it in my own life, but I see it worked out. The whatever the different kind of ground represents, you see that work, people being distracted by the care.
The parable there, by the way.
Say that again, sorry.
It's a good command of the detail of the parable you've got.
Oh yeah, but like details. No, you could have warned, like if you could have warned me, like I could have read it, then I'd have known what you were going to talk about. No,
anyway, do carry on.
I'm realizing other people are going to say, what's your question? What does it look like on a day-to-day basis to invest in that?
You've got the maturity thing, so you've got a big meta picture there of looking for maturity, but like you said, that comes with a lifetime. So how do you, James Barnett, look for those signs of the kingdom on a week-to-week in your life and in your ministry? What do you look for?
That's a good question. What do I look for? So as a vicar, what am I looking for in a church? I'm looking for people who are really hungry to grow, who are really hungry, And therefore, what the task of the church, I guess, is to lay out as many opportunities, as many tools, as many ingredients to help the hungry person feed themselves and feed those around them. So the old analogy of church is not a restaurant, church is a kitchen. Don't feed people, teach people to feed themselves. That, I think, is really important. So church needs to be a gathering of the hungry people who've gathered to learn how to feed themselves, not in a selfish way, but feed themselves in order to learn how to feed others around them. So the signs you look for are hunger. And then I think the task of leadership is to help people with others, always in community, never individually, I don't think, communally build a life, that the scaffolding that enables maturity to grow. So in other words, I always get it confused. I'm not going to say which one. Lead and lag measures. Like, everyone's read the book and talking about it in Resource Church language, but I guess focusing on the inputs rather than the outputs. So looking for hungry people and giving them as much things that you can feed them with, the output, the fruit, kind of takes care of itself in a way. Is that, what, I can't remember the name of the basketball coach, the score takes care of itself. For me, I think that's quite important in church. We can counting fruit and gifts, I'm not sure is a big thing. Count input, count hungry people, count those who are engaging in the stuff that will produce the fruit. That makes sense.
No, it does. So we, nationally, the reports are out that churches are generally on average down 20% attendance. Of that 20% that have gone, I think it's 5% have gone permanently. What would you say then is we just joked before we started recording that every church has done Nehemiah in the last 6 months, which I think is brilliant. But actually, what is the next season, do you think, for your church and for the church nationally? They've just today or yesterday, Church of England commissioners announced they're putting another few billion into mission. But what is it for your church in Burley and us in Acton, us nationally? What is the next season for us post-COVID?
So I don't think we're winning the argument of, I don't think we're offering the world a lifestyle or a picture of life that is any different to those around us. So I think who we are is just the same as everybody else by and large. And therefore our evangelism rings hollow. It's like Jesus's life in all its fullness, yet my life is no different to yours, by the way. And so here in Burley we're prioritizing community and community gathered around the presence of Jesus. So if he's there in the room, what difference does that make? And what kind of community would you build around that? And by doing that, I guess our prayer is that we will become an attractive community that's worth sharing and worth inviting people into. So I think I'm not sure that needs loads of money. So I think small in this sense is really beautiful. So the 5 or the 6 who gather together to eat regularly, to pray for their community, who have little tangible ways in which they bless their street, who just listen to God and maybe share with each other what they think he's saying. You study the, but it's not rocket science, but little gatherings, pockets of disciples who go about the business of the kingdom in a very understated manner. I think is attractive. I think the day of the big mega church may be gone, but I guess the crowd will always attract a crowd. But I'm not sure that's I'm not sure that's the kingdom way. There's a Kansas City church, underground church in the States. They have this vision of a church for every street in Kansas or something like that. And I quite like that idea that on every street there'll be a little group of Christians just doing little things together. I think that so what we're doing here is we're looking at what that means. So it's my drum that you, Tim, will be bored of me banging. We help every one of our little groups here form a very individual rule of life, a communal rule of life, things they commit to do together, dead light touch, and they go about doing that. And slowly, I hope and pray over weeks, months, years, though that little pocket of committed disciples will change their street. That's the vision. Just make an impact on your street. And it looks different. So we've got a little community. One of the ways they bless Burley is they clean the streets. So they're out twice a week in their little jackets. They're in their 70s and they're there picking up litter in the streets. And everyone thinks they're nutters, but everyone loves the fact they're doing it. And that's just their little way of being visible and present. And if you chat to them, the danger is they'll always pray for you. So people have stopped chatting to them. But and all our little groups do different little things like that. It's intentional. But it's focusing on quality, if maturity. It's not focusing on showy or attractive.
Well, look, thank you very much for your time, James, and we'll speak soon. And greetings from Oak Tree in West London.
Good, yeah, all the best. Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.